Are Mercedes Benz reliable? Well, if you ask some critics, they'll chalk up and say they rank literally almost at the bottom of all manufacturers and only beat out manufacturers and brands like the Chryslers, Jeeps, Stellantis products. But before I share what some of the other critics are saying, I'm going to also let you know that later on we're going to share some of the key areas that you're going to anticipate failures with a lot of modern day Mercedes Benz, and as well I'll give you 3 or 4 of the best modern Mercedes Benz in terms of overall reliability. So let's get into it now.
Life's too short to drive boring cars.
Well, the first critic literally ranks Mercedes-Benz as well below average. The second critic actually claims something a little bit different. They actually rank the average Mercedes-Benz at about 3 out of 5 star in terms of overall reliability. And out of about 345 unique specific models, they actually rank 27 out of 32 overall in terms of top levels of reliability. So yeah, they rank very low down, but it doesn't just end there. Some of these numbers are actually a little bit skewed because these vehicles are actually so tightly knit and the mode of failures can be very, very tight between different models. So other factors you can consider when thinking about a Mercedes reliability is about $908 is your average maintenance cost per year, depending on whether you're driving a CLA or an S-Class. It all blends out average. And the average Mercedes owner will visit the dealer unexpectedly about 0.7 times per year, and each visit might be at least 13% in severe consequence. In other words, something catastrophic that goes boom, where the industry average is slightly less. Now, when you compare the annual cost of $908, you have to consider that the industry average is about $652. But when we talk about the frequency of visits unexpectedly to the shop, these vehicles rank at about 0.7 visits per year when the industry average is about 0.4. So almost double. You'll have to go to the dealer twice for every average other vehicle. And again, the consequence of 13% being a catastrophic failure ranks up against 12% of the industry average. This vehicle definitely has a slight increase in terms of the catastrophic levels of failure. And JD Power ranks these Mercedes-Benz substantially better than the other critics. As a matter of fact, in the first 3 years, the number of failures that you would anticipate from the average Mercedes-Benz back in 2021 was approximately 195 issues in 100 vehicles. So what does it all mean? How does that rank with some of its competition in the luxury car segment? While Audi, part of the VAG group or the VAG group, of course, that includes Porsche, Lamborghini, and many others like Volkswagen, don't quite have such a favorable result. For example, Audi reports about 232 failures in 100 vehicles. Jaguar ranks at about 233 problems per 100 vehicles. Acura, believe it or not, is a product of Honda, sees about 244 issues per 100 vehicles, and Land Rover a whopping 284 issues per 100 vehicles you would expect. So while it's not a Toyota Corolla in terms of overall reliability, the fact remains is a lot of Mercedes-Benz are better than a lot of their luxury car segment competitors. Now, they don't hold a candle to brands like Porsche, who tend to hold up very strong. Lexus obviously has an extremely strong showing in terms of overall reliability, but as a whole, with some of their other European counterparts, it does very, very well. JD Power, as a matter of fact, ranks the C-Class like this at 81 out of 100 in terms of overall reliability, and Consumers Reports gives us a 4 out of 5. And Consumers Reports ranks the Mercedes C-Class like this an 83 out of 100 for overall quality. And clearly you're starting to see the picture. The C-Class here is, in fact, one of the more reliable Mercedes-Benz, even though we've had a few nickel and dime issues, cosmetics, body panels popping off. Those aren't necessarily reliability related. They're more nickel and dime. They're problematic, no less, might take a trip to the dealer, but reliability does chalk up to vehicles that won't start on their own, won't move down the road on their own, or might offer up a significant bill to get them rectified. If you wanted to know what some of the key areas of failures on some modern day Mercedes-Benz are, well, let's walk you through some of that right now. And what I know, what I personally experienced through generations, and this isn't just the current generation, but many, many years of Mercedes-Benz ownership has revealed some problems. Yes, I've owned a few Mercedes-Benz all the way harkening back to the ML500 SUV that's built down in the southern United States. That had a lot of problems, not the engine and the gearbox so much, but certainly lots of cosmetic issues, sunroof coming off the rails, plastics, the fitment, all of the hardware components were very fragile. We also have a crankshaft sensor that went on it, and it was a little bit problematic. Water pump I changed as well, that you could argue is maintenance. but fundamentally it was a reliable engine and transmission combo. It was everything around it that was a big issue. What we're finding with some of these modern day vehicles, the plastics down the rocker panels were known to come off. We hit a set of railroad tracks and this actually popped off right there. That seam came right off. It dropped about a ½ inch. We had to take the vehicle back into the dealer. Not an uncommon situation. We're finding a lot of fragile plastics on our vehicle, the Mercedes Benz here. It also does make a lot of weird drivetrain noises from time to time at the front end. We've tried changing the wheels. We've had the wheel verified in terms of overall problems with bearings and the front end inspected, but yet there seems to be an issue there. So I would almost anticipate some fragile activity right there. Also, some of the older Mercedes-Benz are more susceptible to rust. You can expect rust in areas like that. You can expect rust in areas like this around the windows. You can also expect rust in some of the older cars that have the trim along the back, and you could get a rust along that trim. Also, potentially rust around here, around the gas cap some places. And you could expect rust along the bottom of the door panel right there. But there are other issues too. For example, oil leaks. Right under there, you can expect engine, transmission, and differential on the rear end. You can expect oil leaks from the pan gasket, as well as potentially valve covers and a few other hosts of areas. Particularly when you're talking about turbos, you have turbo lines and seals that can fail too, and oil leaks are not uncommon on a lot of modern day Mercedes-Benz, as are coolant leaks from time to time. Now they've gone with electric water pump, less reliable and durable than some of the older mechanical water pumps. So watch out for some of the newer Mercedes and the electric water pump syndrome. You definitely have lower grade plastics like this. Parts are not built to last as long as they used to be. Timing chains, not uncommon for Mercedes-Benz to eat up timing chains. It's usually the guides and the ramps that tend to start becoming brittle and let go. Not uncommon to what BMW has experienced over many generations. Mercedes is no different. And timing chains, if they get too loose, they start to rattle on a startup, because if they fail, they skip a cog and you wind up with a piston running into a valve, and then it's goodbye Charlie, and it's big dollars to repair that. So there's other issues under the hood you would expect too. You can also expect some common failures like the camshaft adjuster solenoid failure in these vehicles. Obviously impacts your timing. The crankshaft position sensor, which I explained I also had on my ML500 fail. You can also get sensors of all types of makes and models. They have lots of sensors in these vehicles, and they can lead to potential failure. Misfires you can get because of poor coils, plugs, but that's not uncommon for any vehicle. That's somewhat a little bit of maintenance, but they do get costly to replace. Engine mounts, on the other hand, are the part that the engine sort of sits on and floats, and it allows to absorb a lot of the vibrations so you don't feel it all through the chassis. Those can deteriorate in time, and it's not uncommon for Mercedes-Benz and engine mounts to become another catastrophic failure point. Another issue with some cars, not so much in the C-Class like this, but as you step it up, you get into the E-Class, the S-Class, you can get what they call the air suspension. Air suspension has a set of compressors, you have airbags and pneumatic lines that keep the pressure in the lines. What it does is give you a much floatier ride, and that is a not uncommon problem. Huge dollars when you have to take it to the shop, but again, watch out for the E-Class, the S-Class, CLS, and even some of the bigger SUVs. You're going to potentially watch out to make sure the air ride suspension system's functioning properly and you don't have an issue there. Outside of these series of typical failures, nothing else wouldn't necessarily fail that you wouldn't find in another car. I mean, you can experience a turbo failure. Most of these vehicles are turbocharged nowadays, but that's not uncommon for any other make. Specifically, these engines aren't all that unreliable. There have been, though, however, if you scour the forum, a few people that have complained about this particular 2-liter turbo 4-cylinder engine in this car here, the C-Class, as well as you'll find in some of the lower class, the GLA, CLA, that they're rocking a French-derived engine. And that cylinder at the back there is susceptible to developing too much heat, too much detonation, basically like a ball peen hammer hitting on the top of your piston crown, and then bang, all of a sudden you're popping a hole. So there have been a few cases where people have seen and witnessed catastrophic engine failures because of that one cylinder specifically. Lean condition can lead to that, and is definitely something to watch out for. The later generations seem to have been rectified. It seems like Mercedes-Benz sort of sorted that out, but that was a problem, and many people of early generations of C-Class with that 2-liter engine have been the unfortunate candidates of a catastrophic engine failure. On a C-Class like this car, there's a battery, and it actually happens to be up in this area. Now this applies to almost any car, but you can flip this up, and now you can see this here. This here is a little panel. You can slide that forward and you can charge your battery for your car right there. Of course, this is actually where the battery is physically located down there, and you can see the positive terminal, but the battery resides under there. It's an easy removal. There's a couple of quick clips and this whole panel comes away, and then you can pull your battery out of there. It's actually quite straightforward. Let's put that down and talk about that. This winter we actually had a weak battery because we hit minus 40 degrees Celsius. Minus 40, the battery cooled off. It didn't work so well. It took lots to crank the vehicle. In doing so, we end up starting the car, but the battery got weak enough to the point where it started triggering a whole host of different lights on the dash. All kinds of faults and warnings. Light warning systems, backup camera, I mean, you name it. Everything pedestrian warning, everything electrical, mostly on the safety side, stopped working properly. The heater was still working, the lights were still working, but it said the lights weren't working. So it was light out, lamp out. It gave us a whole pile of issues. We had to take the vehicle back to the dealer 2 times for them. The first time they reset it, they said it was, triggered because of a low battery voltage. And the second time it came back, they reset it again, but this time we put a new battery in, then they rebooted it. They had to actually reflash the whole system, and then it made it good again. So remember, a lot of problems are attributed to poor battery quality, low voltage, so make sure you stay ahead of that. And a lot of your problems in modern day Mercedes Benz like this can actually be improved. So I bet you're probably wondering which are the most reliable models you can buy in the Mercedes world. Well, let's start with the E-Class. That's the next level up from this. 2008, 2012, in that range, 700 and change to keep it on the road every single year, which is actually relatively affordable when you compare the industry average is just over 600, and as well only 0.6 unexpected visits to the dealer with unexpected repairs. So the E-Class definitely represents well, but it's the older versions of it that are generally less problematic. Then we also talk about the CLA and the GLA. We know about those. Those are the little smaller versions than this. It's got a 2-liter turbo engine. They rock around 200 ponies. They've got a double clutch gearbox. They're primarily a front wheel drive vehicle, although with the 4MATIC you can get the all-wheel drive in those too. They have a little bit of a stripped down interior, but they're fun, they're fresh, they're a little rigid, the ride's a little unreformed, and the interior is a little Spartan. But if you want to touch a sniff of what luxury feels like without spending 2 arms and 3 legs, the GLA, CLA are relatively reliable. They're easy to own, affordable, and you can love those too. The C-Class here, as we're looking right here, there's a few different spotty generations that you would go with and other ones you probably try to avoid. Specifically 2019 to 2021 and above is this latest generation. I would recommend, generally speaking, some fragile cosmetics, but generally the mechanics are fairly stout. We've had some extreme weather here, and other than the battery, the car is gone without a hitch. Very reliable, easy to own, good on gas, and peppy and fun to drive. 2012 to 2015 represent a solid model because some of the quality control was a little better than some of the outgoing models, as well as the early 2000s represents a time when it was a very good, honest, reliable workhorse. Again, a few cosmetic challenges even with that generation, but the early 2000s represents an easy Mercedes Benz to own, operate, relatively cost effective, and you can fix it in your own garage. That's right, some of those older models are great DIY projects, and they can be fun and frivolous to drive around in too. So watch out for those rusty areas, watch out for those tips that I pointed out to you, and of course, generally speaking, yes, if you're asking, are they reliable? They often get bad press, but overall, most Mercedes are relatively reliable. And with all of that said, be sure to check that video all about why are used Mercedes so cheap. You're definitely gonna wanna check that out if you've been shopping for a Mercedes Benz. It's gonna give you the whole storyline. Hope to see each and every one in the next one. We'll see you all real soon. Bye-bye.